It was May 23rd, 1999, and the event wasn't called Over the Edge, a pay per view put on by WWE. And that was the day that Owen Hart fell to his death to the arena and the ring below. And I remember coming home from work, and my mom, my brother, and my cousin told me that, yo, dude, Owen Hart just died. What do you mean died? I said, yeah, he died. He fell in the ring, And then I remember they did a replay because they had done some matches after that. And I remember when I watched it again, and it came to the part where Owen, his death was announced by JR. And that was like, I believe that was definitely one of the first times that I had heard about a wrestler's death. And this time, definitely, it was probably the first time that's ever happened, I believe, for WWE. I don't know that a wrestler died in the ring, especially during a live event. I'm pretty sure that was the first time. But this is the center of the last episode of season 2 for Dark Side of the Ring. This is season 2, episode 10, and it's entitled "The Final Days of Owen Hart." Now, Owen Hart was truly someone who came into his own. I remember him. Really remember seeing him as the Blue Blazer. I didn't even know that was him. And he was so athletic, and he really showed his high flying style and a lot of the stuff that he did as the Blue Blazer. But when he was Owen Hart, a lot of the technical aspect of it, he still did drop kicks. He still did a lot of the stuff that he would do as the Blue Blazer, but he was more on the technical side. And when he signed with WWE when he was 23, and they gave him that gimmick. Even Chris Jericho, who grew up a fan, he said that he recognized him. That, hey, looks like a wrestler from Calgary, Stampede. That kind of style. And then when he saw him do the backflip off of the top rope kind of thing, he was like, yeah, that's Owen. He knew it right away. And when the Blue Blazer gimmick started fizzling out, they, had him get into a feud with his brother. And everybody remembers the culmination of that feud with the baby brother feeling overshadowed by his older brother. And then it culminated at WrestleMania 10. And it was probably one of the best matches, if not one of the greatest matches in the history of the event of WrestleMania. And as he's getting his getting his footing going, he's getting his momentum going, and and then his brother leaves because of the Montreal Screwjob, and he leaves, and then they end up having him relegating him back to his Blue Blazer gimmick in 1998. And this is a gimmick that he did 10 years prior, and why couldn't the WWE put him in a feud with Shawn Michaels? I wonder if it's because they wanted to put that behind them, they didn't want to deal with that. But why couldn't they have done that? Have Owen take on Shawn and pretty much kind of get him back for what happened to his brother. They said they couldn't find a right gimmick for him. He was just a technical wrestler, and you know and it just let me think that just like nowadays, creative doesn't know what to do or how to book their talent. And that it's there, the talent's there, and they just don't see it. The things that he was doing with Brett, they couldn't try to take that and put it over with someone else, Because every time he was in the ring, he was money. He was so good in that ring. And as this episode's going along, they talked to a bunch of the people that were there. Jimmy Corderas, who a former referee for WWE, he was the referee assigned to that match between Owen and the Godfather. And Jimmy Corderas, He was in the ring. He was kicking some debris out of the ring, and he had his hand on the top rope. And all of a sudden, he felt like a breeze come by his head and his shoulder, and then the ring rope, kind of bounced out of his hand, and then he said it went back up into his hand and jammed his fingers. And he looks down. He's like, "Well, what is that?" He looks down and he sees it's Owen, and he immediately calls for the officials. He immediately calls for help. The wrestlers are wondering what's going on, and Jr. and the King even nudged him like this to Jr. because apparently, the King was, Jerry Lawler was seeing what's happening. Once Jr. looked up, he just saw a flash, and then that was Owen coming, falling to the ring. I believe his head hit the top turnbuckle, and they even saw it later on how the looked like it was the outside apron, and it was bloody, and even Martha even said, his wife said that it was dented, and there was some, the ring was kind of shifted in that area. It was, you know what I mean? It was damaged. So you imagine the impact that he had to have hit that ring with. And then Owen fell right next to him, and the medics and the wrestlers are tending to him. Well, you can see that footage where JR is right there. I mean, not JR, but the King is right next to him, and a lot of other people were around him, tending to him, and he's taken to the hospital, and JR doesn't even know. And Kevin Dunn calls him and says, "Do you know the news?" And he goes, "No, I don't know nothing." And then he told him that Owen died, and then he goes, "You're on in 10, 9, he counts down to 0, and JR comes on and pretty much tells everybody that's watching that Owen Hart died. And I remember seeing that, and totally, this is like, I was just so sad. It was so, I'm like, my God, and I'm just thinking that this is the first time that I've ever, heard anything like that or seen anything like that. And wrestlers dying in the ring isn't new, but even at that time. But the way dying like that way is through a thing that you couldn't help, is he's just being, lowered down with a rig, with a clip on his thing, and he did it a number of times before, but so for some reason, it was different, and he fell to his death. And the real eerie thing was that the audience, when they were interviewed and stuff like that, they heard him yell, and he yelled, "Look out!" And it goes to show you that even in his last moments, he showed concern for those below, and he didn't want to hurt anybody. I mean, Jim Cornette was in this, and it looked like he was going to continue on with that thought because he's the one that brought that up, and he couldn't. And he was going to say that, that he showed concern even because that's the kind of person that he was. He was a funny, ribbing guy. He would rib you. He would pull pranks and joke with you. And at the same time, the guy was a very caring guy. He's a loving father, loving husband, and it was like, to do that, it showed the character that he had. It showed that, it's just like, you would think that you're thinking about yourself at that time, because you're like wondering what's going on. Oh my God, I'm falling to my death. And you still had the presence of mind to say, look out, But then after this happens, Martha Hart, Owen Hart's wife, is contacted by Vince McMahon and says that he doesn't have much news right now, except that, Owen fell. And she's like, "We can get somebody to tell me. I want to know." So Vince, gets a doctor, has a doctor call her, and then the doctor is telling her all of what led up to it, and the injuries, probably because she was saying that a lot of things being said, and then she just said, "Can you just get to the end?" Because the doctor wanted to fly her over to get the news personally, but you know what I mean? That would be so nerve-wracking for her. Like, she'd be in the plane just thinking about what's happening to her, her husband. So she wanted it right away, and he told her that he passed away, and she broke down and started crying. Her son Oj was his mom, and he went to the room, didn't even know why She was yelling out the things she was yelling, and she was just hysterical, you know. And then they would have the funeral a few days later on May 31st, and Owen was ready to rest, and family and wrestlers were in attendance, and even outside there was over 1,000 people that were outside, and they piped they had speakers outside so that the fans there could hear the the ceremony and everything. And then after that, immediately, Martha Hart had started an investigation, and she begins in Kansas City at the Kemper Arena, and she goes to the top where Owen went, the top of the arena. She looked down. Her son, and Owen's son looks down, and they totally talked about how far that fall was, and just how even his son was saying that his dad must have been just so terrified in his last seconds of his life. You see the distance, and you're just thinking, what's going through your head? You know what I mean? When you're falling that far down, and you're just thinking, this is it. And she's talking about she had like a manila envelope, and she had copies of papers and stuff like that in there, and she had the clip that held Owen. And she looked at it, and she talked about how it only needed 6 pounds of pressure to release the clip. And of course, Owen Hart is like 240 pounds. And they even said that it there was people, because I remember hearing the news afterwards, and they're talking about how once he was over the ledge, it just opened up. The clip just released. And she said that she gasped at the clip, and how the clip was so, like, it just, to her, it looked, and I saw it, I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, that's the thing that held Owen Hart up, something that with just 6 pounds of pressure could easily, boop, and then that's it. And apparently that's what happened, that it couldn't hold him. And 6 pounds of pressure, you imagine if he was hovering over, and the pressure he's putting on it, And she's talking about the clip, and then she's talking about all of the things that she was talking about in regards to the rigging crew. Like, the rigging crew that they were using for that day wasn't the same one, And she's talking about a guy named Bobby Talbert, and she pretty much said that this guy that had no experience, he shouldn't have been the one to handle anything because he was so inexperienced. And I wonder if he was involved in that lawsuit that she later filed. You know what I mean? But she did say she was targeting the WWF and the people that involved, so that had to be them, and stuff like that. Maybe even the producers of the match, And talking about that, man, it's like they went to I believe it was like they went to a different type of a clip or a thing, because they wanted Owen, as soon as he landed in the ring, they wanted him to be released quickly, and then he can get into the ring, and he can go to work. Just for 2 seconds, they wanted to be 2 seconds quicker. They did what they did with the clip, changed it out, what have you. It's like, just for that, it's just like 2 seconds, like, what's it gonna hurt? If you're 2 seconds, slow, or to get him out of the thing. You know what I mean? It's like, but sometimes these things are like that. Do you want to do, it's like calling, do you want to do shortcuts? It's almost like what they talk about with Brandon Lee in his death on The Crow, that they were too busy. They wanted to, it's something sort of matter that they took shortcuts, and a lot of it led to the situation that happened with, him being killed by, we all know the story. Those of you watching, I'm pretty sure everybody knows. And it's just a matter of just the whole thing of the shortcuts, taking shortcuts. You don't take shortcuts when it's going to be involving someone's safety. And then after that, after she talks about all the evidence she had and everything. She brings a wrongful death lawsuit against Vince McMahon, the WWF, and all those involved, and because they were negligent in her eyes, they were, the cause of her husband's death. And Vince at times, man, he comes off real shady in this throughout the dark side of the ring thing, and all the episodes that you see with Vince McMahon when he's talked about. Like he wanted to move the case to Connecticut from Kansas City because in Connecticut there are no punitive damages, so he didn't have to pay for you know what I mean. It's just like when what happened with Dr. D, Dr. Death. I mean Dr. D, the Dr. David Schultz, the one who slapped John Stossel. And then for some reason, he's like, there was like a thing where he, paid lawyers and stuff like that in order to, it was just a lot of shady stuff, And for him to do that, it's just like, you even see a confrontation he had with, I guess it was a reporter. And he's all talking about, oh, I don't like the tone in your voice, and she's all, well, I don't like your sarcasm, and and everything. And this is a guy who has had his issues with whole steroid scandal that almost, that almost 86 to WWE. If you would have lost that case, then that would have been it, for the company. And the guy's dodging a lot of bullets, a lot of things, and then the thing was really sad is that Martha Hart said that the Harts, the family, were silent while others, worked against her. They steal documents, they would give them to the defense, and it did really, really hurt her case, like in the sense that, it's just that she even told them, hey, I understand if you guys don't agree with me, but can you guys not try to, pretty much sabotage her case or try to work against her? And the reason why they did it is because it was brought up that, the Hart Foundation, the members, the family members, they still had to work, in the wrestling industry, and they wanted to work with Vince McMahon and be on good terms, pretty much. And for her to do that, it's kind of like would leave a wedge between those two. I mean, you see Natalya working for WWE right now, and you see, I believe her husband, her husband is, Tyson Kidd, or TJ Wilson is, he's a producer, I believe, or a trainer. And it ends up, that after a year-long battle, the WWE awards her $18 million. But it wasn't about the money. She wanted it to go to trial. She didn't want a settlement. She wanted it was about justice and accountability. And going back to the fact that the event, Over the Edge, went on, and they sent wrestlers out, Vince McMahon did, to wrestle. Imagine the wrestlers and what was going on in their minds. They definitely saw the part of the ring that Owen fell. And I remember that back then too, and I was wondering, me and my brother, my cousin were wondering, is it going to go on? Because there was how long was it? About 30 minutes maybe before they resumed the event, or maybe an hour. It was some time. And I was wondering, and then they did, and I forget what was on that card. I think the Undertaker, I believe, was in the main event, if I'm not mistaken. I know that it says in here that D'Lo and Mark Henry were challenging X-Pac and Kane for the tag team titles. They saw Owen Hart before he went up to the rafters to rehearse, and this is something that has, for the life of WWE, as long as they have been in existence to this day, from that moment, they've been criticized, they've been questioned as to why that they continued. I mean, I think people would have understood if they had canceled the event or just stopped the event. And if everybody knew, they'd have been like, okay, we got it, you know. And you know what I mean? But who's to say why? Who's to say if they were wrong, if they were right, what was going on? It is a business after all, but at the same time, is that the kind of thing that you want to do, especially after someone just died in the ring? You know, I don't know. But it should have been stopped, and investigators led in to examine the ring because it became a scene of a death. You know, there could have been something there. They could have gone up to the rafters and checked it out. They could have looked at the clip at that time, you know, and seen what's going on. Talked to the riggers, talked to Mr. McMahon, talked to whoever else. You know, they did that. But looking back at his career, and had he not passed, and this was brought up by Chris Jericho, that right around the corner, Eddie Guerrero came in. Uh, Malenko, Edge and Christian were on the rise at that time. You know, Kurt Angle came in a few years later, and imagine, you know, the matches that he could have had with those wrestlers and others. You know, John Cena was going to come around in 2002, along with that great class from OVW, right? Batista and Shelton Benjamin and Brock Lesnar and whom else? Randy Orton. What a great class. Imagine the matches that he would have had. I mean, he was talking about getting out early because he wanted to save up enough money so that he can heal up and he can, you know, get better and, you know, and be able to live to spend more time with his wife and kids, you know. And, you know, Owen was a trailblazer, and he was someone who was high flying, doing that high flying stuff, and he was doing, you know, things that is commonplace now. You know, you see Ricochet, you see all these wrestlers who do a lot of high flying stuff, but nobody did it better than him. No one at that time. And this is a guy who I'm sure inspired a lot of wrestlers now. I mean, I think Kevin Owens even named his son after Owen Hart, and you know, so his legacy, you know, lives on, and you know, it lives on in his kids, Oj and Athena, and they went on to become successful themselves. Oj is a lawyer, and he's looking to pursue human rights law, according to his mom, and Athena is a journalism graduate, and there's an Owen Hart Foundation that, you know, does great work through his name, you know, and that's the thing that that Martha and her kids want to be to be the thing that that he's known for, and that the fact that the Hall of Fame, you know, there are those that said that he belongs in the Hall of Fame, JR and others. But Jim Cornette talked about how, you know, Owen Hart, you know, he's not in the Hall of Fame, WWE Hall of Fame, because Martha doesn't want her husband to be celebrated and glorified by the very same company that took him away from her. You know, and she's saying, you know, he was talking about how, you know, Vince McMahon, you know, he continued the event after her husband died, pretty much saying, oh, they just scraped his, you know, his body off the mat and then sent wrestlers in. You know, she was like all about like why would she want Owen to be in the Hall of Fame? There are people that blindly call for Owen to be in the Hall of Fame. I believe he was in a Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame and she was there, but it wasn't WWE. Think about it, folks. A lot of you want to call her all kinds of names, tell her say all kinds of things about her, but what if it was your husband, your wife, your brother, your sister that this happened to with a company? You're going to want to have that very company celebrate them and give the person an award and stuff like that when they're the ones that, you know, that were negligent and that it caused the events that happened that killed her husband. You got to think about it from her perspective, not just from your selfish need to see a wrestler be put in the Hall of Fame. You know, this is funny because a lot of people say that the WWE Hall of Fame is a joke, right? These people say the very same people that say that and say that people are going in that Hall of Fame. It's such a joke because they put celebrities in there. They put who gives a crap wrestlers in there, people that didn't even do nothing. And yet, every time you see it, every year, when there's like a wrestler that passes away or someone who everybody starts remembering how great he was, oh, we should be in the WWE Hall of Fame. What is that going to do for Owen Hart? What's that going to do for, when you think about it? It's like, especially what his son said, it's better that he would be remembered through the Owen Hart Foundation, than the damn, what's his name, a name on a piece of, a piece of tin, something like so he says something like that. Always says something like that, and that's true. But for those of you who want him in the Hall of Fame, I mean, he'd be right up there with his brother and his brother-in-law, Jim Neidhart, and his father and Stu Hart, and some of his contemporaries there. But it's like, don't be hard on Owen Hart's wife, his widow. She doesn't want him in there. She has a reason. It's not like she's being selfish. There's a reason why she doesn't want Owen Hart in the WWE Hall of Fame. If I'm not mistaken, I do remember that there was a Hall of Fame that he recently was that he was inducted into. It was called the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. I think that's what it's called. But and I think that's enough for her. It's just like But I told you my heart goes out to her and her son and her daughter. And I wish them the best, and I hope that that the fans will the fans will come to realize that it's her decision. She's the one that's carrying on her husband's name, and she's the one that makes the decisions. It's like it's the WWF that he passed away in. He was in wrestling, preparing to wrestle, and he falls to his death, and it's in the company that he did, and there's a lot of things circulating around. A lot of questions that are still being asked about it, and I understand people wanting him to be in the WWE Hall of Fame, but his wife has every reason to not want her husband in the Hall of Fame. It's plain and simple. But this was the last episode of season 10. Don't know if there's a season 3, but I look forward to it if there is. But this was by far the best season. I've said that best season, best episode. I've said that for the past number of episodes, but it just seems to get better and better. A lot of things. They didn't really interview anybody else but Owen about Owen's wife and kids, and some of the other luminaries like Jim Cornette and JR, Chris Jericho, but nobody from the family. Bret Hart, nobody else. Any of Owen's surviving family members, nieces or nephews, they weren't. So that's a point of conjecture for a lot of people, that you don't get a lot of the story. You don't get a lot of people talking or being interviewed. But sometimes people turn it down. Some people don't want to have anything to do with it. I think a lot of people didn't want to have anything to do with this documentary. It's a great series, but a lot of people didn't want to have anything to do with it, especially WWE. Especially those who are still connected to WWE. They're not going to talk. They're not going to do this. Vince McMahon is. You know how it is. But anyway, that's my thoughts on the Dark Side of the Ring, season 2, episode 10, entitled "The Final Days of Owen Hart." I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I grew up being a really big fan of Owen Hart. It was his brother Bret at first, the Owen Hart Foundation. Then when he became a singles wrestler, I followed him, and then his baby brother Owen almost starts to outshine him, especially in that WrestleMania 10 match. And gotta look back at that match, because I remember seeing it first couple of times. I've only seen it maybe about 2, maybe 3 times, and I really enjoyed that match. It's really one of the best technical displays of wrestling, and you see what happens when you have two great wrestlers with the same moveset, the same knowledge, the same technical skill. And it was a clinic. It was really a wrestling clinic, and it was one of the best matches in WrestleMania, right up there with Macho Man and Savage, and I mean Macho Man and Savage, Macho Man and Ricky Steamboat, and maybe even Undertaker and Shawn Michaels. A lot of great matches, and that's right up there with them, maybe even the best. But those are my thoughts on this Dark Side of the Ring episode 10 of season 2. And for those of you who stopped by and checked it out, I appreciate it. And in closing, as always, take care. Please remember to subscribe, click like, and click the bell icon for all notifications on this channel.